Howdy everybody. So I've been absent from my channel for a few months, and that's just because of a number of things that have been going on. Not really going to get into that, but I will say this. I am in the process of beginning to rework my channel and how it's going to work. And you'll see that as I'm going forward with this video that I'm doing. So I want to start talking about things that I have an interest in, and that I hope that by expressing my thoughts on the subject gets you to be interested and go see it as well. So I'm going to start a discussion series on an older series known as Katekyo Hitman Reborn. This series was written by the mangaka known as Akira Amano, who you may know as the mangaka of Psycho-Pass. In this series of Reborn, the main plot line is there is a middle schooler student named Sawada Tsuneyoshi, and he gets approached by this baby wearing a baby wearing a suit named Reborn, hence the name of the show. Reborn is a hitman. He lets Suna know that he's the next candidate to be a mafia boss, and thus the crazy adventures ensues. Reborn has a lot of interesting concepts in it, and you really see that with the power system that it has. The power system of Reborn revolves around these things called Dying Will Flames, and there are 7 of them in total. Each flame has a different thing that it can do, and the main character Suna's Dying Will Flames were first revealed when Reborn hit him with a Dying Will bullet, which put him into Dying Will mode. Once inside Dying Will mode, Suna gets orange eyes and he gets a flame on his forehead, and he basically gets to pull off amazing feats with all his powers. Another thing about Reborn, the character, is what he is. He is something that is referred to in this series as an arcobaleno, which I believe is Italian for rainbow, but regardless of that fact, there are 7 of them in total, each corresponding with a different color pacifier. Reborn has an orange one, there's one named Fong who has a red one, there is Cornello who has a blue, Viper who has indigo, Verde who has green, Aria who has orange, and did I say Reborn had an orange pacifier? Reborn has a yellow pacifier. Aria has orange, and Skull has the purple pacifier. It's like 7 flames, 7 arcobaleno, this, that, and the third. Concept of Reborn. I will admit, though, in my experience with Reborn, the first arc is the slowest part of the show to get through. And it was the roughest for me. I remember back at my old job, I had talked to somebody about it, and he was like, yeah, the first arc is the hardest part to get through, but after you get through that part, it's well worth the ride. And it turns out he was right. Reborn has, even though it's one that I got to rather recently, it threw its way into my top 10 with the colorful cast of characters, the amazing action, the heartfelt moments that are in this show are amazing, and just the complexity in how the mafia world works. I always found it interesting. So for this series of discussion videos, I'm gonna go in the order that they had the battles in the second arc, which is the Battle of the Rings, basically. So, as you probably guessed it, this video is going to be about the Vongole Sun Guardian Ryohei Sasagawa. So Ryohei Sasagawa is the elder brother of Kyoko Sasagawa, who is the main character's love interest, for lack of a better term. She's the one the main character has a crush on. Ryohei is the boxing team captain of the middle school that they go to, which is Namimori Middle. He's a 15-year-old kid, and he has a very interesting worldview on life that at least I find it interesting. He likes to live life by, quote, taking things to the extreme. So basically, doing everything to the best of your ability so that you don't have any regret. And we even see this whenever him and Suna had like a little miniature battle in the beginning of the series, and Reborn hits Ryohei with a Dying Will bullet, and his attitude doesn't change. Because normally whenever Suna went into Dying Will initially, he would get like really like hyper and aggressive, as opposed to Suna's normal like calm and wimpy self. But Ryohei's attitude didn't change at all. After said fight with Suna, he gains a respect for Suna because he understands how strong Suna has the capability of becoming, which leads him to being a member of Suna's family, and taking on the role of a guardian. Initially, Ryohei doesn't really have any idea about like what the whole mafia world entails, but he takes his duties as the Sun Guardian very seriously. Ryohei is the type of person who, no matter what happens to himself, he will always put himself in the forefront of danger to protect his family. And he also, so by contrast, he hates those who abandon others, whether it be family members or box weapons that are supposed to be your partners. Ryohei hates it whenever somebody is just willing to just abandon everything, which puts him into conflict with someone else who we're going to get to in a little bit. Speaking of his role as the Sun Guardian, the way that Reborn explained this is that Ryohei's role as the Guardian of the Sun is to be the shining sun that incinerates the enemies of the family with his body. Since Ryohei's a boxer, this already applies to him, and essentially, he kind of acts like the vanguard unit of the family. He's always the first one out there willing to put himself at risk in order to save his family, basically. Another key role for the Sun Guardian is the ability to overcome adversity. And this can be with anything, whether it's something that he doesn't know how to do or a fight that he's initially unable to win. He needs to have the power within himself to overcome any adversity so that he can be the true guardian of the family. So very obviously, Ryohei is not the only guardian in the Vongoy family. There are others. So I'm going to go through his relationships with each of the other guardians very briefly. So the first guardian I'm going to talk about is the guardian of the rain, who is Yamamoto Takeshi. As far as him and Ryohei are concerned, they have a very sportsman-like respect for each other. Because Yamamoto is the captain of the baseball team at their middle school. So they have a mutual respect for sports, which leads them to mutually respect each other. So no matter, they don't really argue that much, and Yamamoto is not really one to argue anyway. He more so goes along with whatever happens because that's just what his character is. But they do definitely have a really nice and sportsman-like friendship with each other. As far as the Guardian of the Lightning Ring, Lambo, Ryohei more so views him as a younger brother figure, like somebody who basically needs to be protected. Because in Ryohei's mind, in any really dangerous situation, he doesn't really want to get women or children involved because it's just against his nature, I guess. So anytime something serious is going down, he definitely doesn't want Wombo to be a part of whatever is happening. And he's always concerned for the well-being of Wombo. As far as the Storm Guardian Gokudera is concerned, Ryohei and him have a very interesting little rivalry going on. They're constantly at each other's throats because whereas Gokudera mostly thinks things through while he goes on about doing his day-to-day, Ryohei hardly ever does that. And Gokudera hates the sportsman-like jock mindset because it's just a really dumb thing to him. So they're always at each other's throats, basically, and, you know, they call each other names. Gokudera calls Ryohei Turf Top, and Ryohei calls Gokudera Squid Head. But even throughout all of that, they definitely have a respect for each other, and they're definitely concerned for one another's well-being. So when push comes to shove and they need assistance, they're gonna fight for it. They're gonna fight for one's gonna fight for the other to save them. They're never going to abandon each other, regardless of how much they are. As far as both of the Guardians of the Mysteries are concerned, with Chrome and Mercuro, Ryohei doesn't necessarily have a relationship with any of them. Since he doesn't really want women or children to be involved in anything super dangerous, he more so kind of views Chrome as like, you know, the would rather protect mindset for her. And Mercuro he never had an interaction with officially to begin with. Because whenever Mercuro was introduced initially as the villain of the first arc, Ryohei never really had any altercations with him because he was taken out earlier on in that arc by somebody else entirely. So he doesn't have a relationship with Mercuro that would lead to being conversation worthy. In regards to the Cloud Guardian Kyoya Hibari, Ryohei has a very begrudging respect for Hibari. Hibari is the kind of person who hates crowds of people. Like, even if it's just 3 people, Hibari would hate being in that situation. And he's always alone. So him being a part of Suna's family is a very difficult thing because he never wants to associate with any of them. Frankly, Suna's family is full of a lot of people that Hibari wants to fight because he likes fighting strong people. So it doesn't really matter to him. Ryohei consistently tries to get Hibari to participate in family activities, but Hibari is going to naturally refuse that. And Ryohei significantly dislikes Hibari for that fact. But, again, when push comes to shove and it's absolutely needed, they will do what is necessary to save one another. Hibari won't necessarily consider it saving the person, and for as much as he may not want to admit it, he does have a reason to associate with the family, regardless of how much Ryohei's tactics push him away from that. But Hibari can't deny that Ryohei has his uses in a number of situations, which is why I feel like Hibari also has respect for him. As far as the boss of the family is concerned, Ryohei has an immense amount of respect for Suna, not just as a friend, but also as the boss of the Vongole family. He respects Suna's kindness, and he understands Suna's compassion for others, which is something that Ryohei really gravitates towards because, as I mentioned, he hates people who abandon others. And Suna's never going to be one to abandon anybody, any one of his friends. And Ryohei really respects that about Suna. But also, when push comes to shove, and Suna needs to throw down, he will throw down for the sake of anybody. So Ryohei also respects Suna's power as the boss of the family, and he understands how strong Suna is and can still be going forward. Now that I've gotten his relations out of the way, I'm going to get into some of his powers. So, of the 7 types of dying will flames, Ryohei's flames are the yellow flames of the sun. And the power that sun flames hold are the power of cell activation, which basically amounts to hyper regeneration and a bunch of other things that I can't really go into. Essentially, it's just supercharging Ryohei's cells with energy that allow him to pull off many different feats. One of these feats is Ryohei's signature technique, the Maximum Cannon, where Ryohei charges up all of his cells' energy into his fist and releases a devastating punch that can level an entire boulder or a entire gymnasium. Another technique that he showed during the Future arc was known as the Maximum Ingra, where Ryohei essentially moves at hyper speeds to create 3 shadows of himself that all deliver a devastating uppercut to an opponent. Also, during the Future arc, we got introduced to these things known as box weapons. Box weapons are little boxes that whenever you inject a certain flame into them, they open up and produce any number of things. Like in Future Ryohei's case, he had boxing gloves, but he also got an animal that came with it known as the Mangaroo. In this series, whenever you combine your box animal with your box weapon, you get to be able to do some pretty amazing feats. The way to trigger this is by saying the phrase Cambio Forma. So Ryohei's initial new weapon that he got from this was based off of the first generation Vongole family's sun guardian named Knuckle. His weapon was known as the Maximum Break. So basically how this works is Ryohei gets supercharged with sun flames. So for a grand total of 3 minutes, he basically gets that entire time to just wail on his opponents with hypercharged cellular energy to release all of his attacks to their maximum potential. Eventually, as the series goes on and he gets his Vongole ring destroyed, Ryohei gets the opportunity to have another gear piece that allows him to use his powers in his own way. This was known as the Vongole gear, and his Vongole gear was the Bangle of the Sun version X, which goes on his left arm. Upon combining with the Mangaroo, he gets a new set of boxing equipment that works for his personal style of fighting. So whenever Mangaroo combines with the Bangle, he gains all these little tassel things around the outside of the Bangle that resemble a sun. And whenever he takes damage, eventually one of the tassels will light up, and as the fight goes on, more and more of them will light up. The more tassels are lit up, the more power Ryohei can release with certain attacks. The only attacks that we've seen him release with this new piece of Vongole gear for the fight that he had with it were the Sunshine counter, which was a counter attack using the energy from the tassels as well as his own flame energy to release a massive counter attack against somebody who was going against him. And then the Sunshine upper, which just the uppercut with more energy than he normally would have as well. And then also the maximum Sunshine counter, which is basically once all tassels are charged up, he releases all of that energy in one final attack that can almost certainly annihilate pretty much anyone he goes against. Now that you have a basic understanding of what Ryohei's powers are, I want to get into some of the fights that he's been in throughout the course of the series. Within the first major arc of Kokyo, he got off screen by Joshima in the beginning of that arc, so he didn't really have any benchmark for how strong Ryohei could really be, which makes the next arc, whenever he battles against Luceria of the Varia, all the more important, because it's the first real fight that Ryohei has, and it's the first test of strength that he has to overcome. Luceria is a member of the Vongole independent assassination squad known as the Varia, and the Varia wanted their boss to be the overall boss of the Vongole, which is why they had a battle with Suna's family. Luceria is a Muay Thai user who has a metal plate implanted on his knee, and whenever Ryohei was fighting against him, we get to see what it means to be able to overcome adversity, because Ryohei's bare hands against the metal knee, obviously he wasn't really going to be able to do much against that, and his hands got wrecked in that fight. But this fight is also where we see the first use of the maximum cannon, and with the use of that technique, he shatters Luceria's knee and wins the fight, thus making him the true guardian of the sun of the Vongole family. During the future arc, younger Ryohei doesn't really get that much screen time, so we get more of it with future Ryohei. Future Ryohei has a brief little battle against this dude named Vaishana, who has a giant snake thing that he uses to fight with. And during this fight, we basically get to see the proper use of Ryohei's Sun Flames, because this is Ryohei who's had 10 years to practice with his abilities, which is where we first see the use of the maximum Ingram technique. So pretty much right after this fight, he does lose out to a dude named Gamma. After this, whenever younger Ryohei does jump on the scene, he doesn't really do much in the choice battle, but he does fight after that against the leader of the 6 funeral wreaths named Kikyo. Kikyo is a person who uses Cloud Flames, and Cloud Flame's ability is essentially propagation, which is making more of things. So Kikyo could basically make an endless amount of monsters to attack Ryohei. So Ryohei, to counterbalance that, is whenever he first used Knuckles' Maximum Break and basically was trying to overpower Kikyo's endless propagation. Though he didn't necessarily win that fight, it was still shown that he was very strong, and he gave Kikyo a run for his money before a bunch of other people jumped in. After this, we have the Inheritance Ceremony arc, where initially Ryohei, as well as the rest of the Guardians of the Vongole, all get trounced and their rings get destroyed, hence why they all got their own little gear pieces and Ryohei got his bangle. During this arc, he fights against the Forest Guardian of the Simone family. The Simone family use different flames than the flames of the sky, which is what all of the Dying Will flames that the Vongole Guardians have. The Simone family use flames of the earth, and the person that Ryohei fought is basically his counterpart on the side of the Simone family, the Forest Guardian. So, in order to really explain how Forest Flames work, the easiest way to think about this is Byakuya's ability from Bleach, Senbone Sakura. Essentially, his flames are in the shape of thousands of tiny leaves that will shred you to pieces. The conditions of this fight were interesting because how all the fights in this arc worked was you had to put your pride on the line, and whatever you decided your pride was, if you lost it, then you would be imprisoned. So how this fight worked was Ryohei and the man who he was fighting against, Aoba Koyo, I think is how you say his name. The condition to win the fight is whoever's knees touches the ground first loses. So once that was established, the battle began. Ryohei begins using his Vongole gear as effectively as he can, taking a little bit of damage here and there at a time, and then releasing the charges on his bangle in the Sunshine counter and the Sunshine upper and things. But once he hits Aoba with the Sunshine upper, he knocks off his glasses. And when Aoba gets his glasses knocked off, we realize that you can't see anything out of his glasses, like, at all. Aoba wears those glasses as a personal handicap because if he is able to, once he takes them off, he can see any kind of weak spot in the person's body. And if he strikes that weak point, then the hit obviously does more damage than hitting anywhere else. So in this fight, we see Ryohei get beaten down by Aoba, getting continuously hit in all of his weak spots. All of the bones in his body pretty much just get broken in this fight. But Ryohei is still doing his best to take as much damage as he can in order to release the full power of his Vongole gear. And once he gets the full charge and releases the maximum Sunshine counter, even with that, Aoba doesn't go down. And both of them pass out from their injuries at this point, to which it is a draw, and they both get imprisoned. Suna is naturally concerned about this, and Suna already has a bunch of other things that he's dealing with in the midst of this whole ordeal anyways. So seeing Ryohei get taken kind of demoralized him. But then he looks at Suna and he's just kind of like, what's with that pathetic look for, Sawada? I know you have your pride. I've seen it. Don't let go of it and don't lose sight of it. It's what's going to carry you through this. And even here, we can clearly see the amount of respect that Ryohei has for Suna, because even with him being taken away, that's not really his main concern. His main concern was encouraging Suna to move forward, which, considering what his role is as a Sun Guardian, makes complete sense. During the final arc of the series, known as the Curse of the Rainbow arc, Ryohei doesn't really get much screen time in that arc. The premise of that arc was basically each one of the Arcobaleno had representatives that had watches on. Your watch gets destroyed, you're out of the representative battle. When the Arcobaleno were choosing representatives, most of Suna's family decided to work with Reborn to try and get his curse removed. However, Hibari, since he doesn't like grouping up with people, he decided to work with the Arcobaleno known as Fong, the one with the red pacifier. Hibari, being Fong's representative, had to take out the other representatives, and whenever Ryohei went to try to go fight against him, Hibari instantly just smashes his watch because Ryohei was more concerned with the fact that Hibari abandoned them than actually trying to fight Hibari. So Hibari just ducks under him and smashes his watch, and Ryohei's out of the fight from that point onward. It's sad that he didn't get much representation, but I think all of the fights that we've seen Ryohei in up till this point are more than enough to justify why he is able to be the Vongole Sun Guardian, and just enough to establish how great his character is. For as crazy and wild as Ryohei can and tends to be at any given point in time, I've always loved his character because he never apologizes for being himself. He's always out. He's an extreme. He's definitely an extrovert. He always wants to do what he can in order to live his life the way that he wants to live it. And honestly, who all can't relate to that? Ryohei doesn't have any limits placed on his life, which is why he's able to take things to the extreme. And I think we can all learn something from that outlook. Don't limit yourself because of what you think others are going to say about you. Don't let what everybody else considers normal constrain you from acting how you want to act or acting how you naturally act. Take chances. Do things that you probably never thought you would do. Maybe you'll enjoy them. But it's better than living with regret for never having done them in the first place. And I think that's what Ryohei's character lives to show. Well, that's the end of this video. Since I'm going in the order of the ring battles, the next video that I do will be about the Lightning Ring Guardian, Lambo. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you later.